Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. I've set out to uncover amazing and insightful stories by interviewing people from all different backgrounds and perspectives. But unlike other interview shows, only this show aims to also teach you what it means to listen more than you speak, so that you can become a more thoughtful and informed person. I am a former journalist who believes everyone has a story to tell, and that listening to someone speak their truth and their experience is one of the most human things we can do. More than ever, there's a general lack of willingness to go deep to understand why people think, act, and believe like they do, especially when there are differences of opinions. My goal is to counter this by asking my guests questions and getting out of their way. By seeding the narrative and simply asking the next question, I hope the stories that deserve to be told come to life so that we all might better empathize with the people, the human beings around us. Today on the show, I welcome Robin Dreeke, the former head of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Program. Now, Robin, in that role, as you'll hear him describe, he strategized engagements and exchanges of resources with people who could offer the United States government valuable information. In short, he recruited spies. It's really interesting stuff. We get right into that right off the bat here in this conversation, and what goes into recruiting an agent from a foreign government to flip. But so much of this can carry over into our everyday lives, so much of what Robin talks about. We don't have to be recruiting spies to get value from Robin's approach, his technique, his advice. Robin, he'll also describe a term that he coined called stempathy. You'll have to listen to know what he means by that. And we discuss how our intuition is biased, plus much more, including his 6 signs for sizing people up. You're going to really enjoy this episode. I greatly enjoyed getting a chance to talk with Robin. So here it is, folks. My conversation with Robin Dreeke. Can you just describe the work that you did as the director of the FBI Behavioral Analysis Program?
Yeah. So it's funny. I've reflected on that many times as well. It's where you usually get your aha moments in life when you retroflect on things.
Right.
And so our job basically was to strategize human engagements. And, I always like putting things in business terms so people can kind of understand it easier, because it's just another job. Believe it or not, recruiting spies, which is the primary job I had in the FBI, is really sales. In sales, you're always selling yourself, and you're trying to build trust, and you're trying to talk and discover the priorities of others and offer resources that you have in terms of those priorities. Same thing when you're recruiting spies. You're trying to discover the priorities of others. If one of those priorities happens to be they want their kids or their families to settle here in the United States instead of the regime they're under, well, that's a priority I can help with, and I can share my priorities with, share the secrets that you're trying to steal from my country, so it's an exchange of resources. So what my team did is, everyone kind of categorizes all behavioral things in the FBI from what they see in Criminal Minds and things like that. Mm-hmm. And the criminal side does things called profiling, where they don't know who the individual is they're going to interact with. And so based on their great research and experience and science they create these ideal resumes or profiles for individuals that might have committed that type of crime from past experience. So that creates a great filter of information coming in. So it helps them, go down more plausible leads rather than wasting their time. Well, what my team did was that we always know who we're going to engage with. So we actually strategized engagements. So we strategize interviews, we strategize recruitments. Basically, we strategize sales. We strategize, how to inspire someone to want to buy our product, whether it's during a double agent operation, a false flag operation, recruitment strategy, espionage interview strategy. And so that's what we did. And so when I took that step back a number of years ago and I started teaching this stuff and gave it labels and meanings, it started becoming clear, like I call it the new car effect. You buy a new car and all of a sudden you start seeing that same make and model everywhere because it has value and meaning to you, because it has a label. And so when you give behaviors labels, you start recognizing them there as well, everywhere. And so I did everything for work by giving things labels and meanings, with developing rapport, developing trust, and you start seeing it and opportunities for it everywhere. So my team when I took that step back in creating these strategies, for the hundreds of assessments I did a year, in my own cases for the team, what I realized was we were strategizing trust all the time. We're strategizing trust because if you're trying to inspire someone for action in some way, whatever that action is, you can't inspire anyone to do anything without trust. And the thing that kind of throws people a little bit is you'd think that the counterintelligence guy that's a spy recruiter is going to teach you all about manipulation. And I am the guy that's going to tell you to stay completely away from it, because if you want trust, you can't even have a hint or a thought in the other person's mind that you're trying to manipulate them or take advantage of them in any way. So it's all about good, open, honest, transparent communications, building good, strong, healthy relationships, and discovering how you can be a resource for others with no expectation or reciprocity. There you go. Long answer.
As you were recruiting potential spies, how do you keep it from not getting out, not blowing up, somebody not going back and saying, hey, this guy's trying to get me to sign up to be a spy? I'm assuming there's a lot of pre-work that goes involved into that, but how do you keep that from happening? That
is probably one of the best questions that is most insightful I've ever had on a podcast, because a lot of times people just assume that that's a given, but that is actually a very, very good question. It actually goes into our strategies a lot. We have to have a certain, because you could have major political blowback and it happens, if we try to recruit, an intelligence officer from a foreign country, which is 99% of the time, they are diplomats at embassies all over the world under diplomatic cover. If they report that initiation of contact or that attempted recruitment attempt to their security officers, which goes to the ambassador, you have major blowups. You have individual selection is really key in this. In other words, they have to show and demonstrate a propensity to potentially at least want to listen. And what we're always doing as human beings is we're looking for deviations from normal standard behavior. And so if you have a group of intelligence officers, so I worked Russia, in the United States, and you have there are lots of intelligence officers from Russia in our country, and you have a standard pattern of behavior and communication that they generally have with other people. You get what normal looks like. But then if you have an outlier that that asks kind of different questions, that tries to make contact with slightly different people, then you have someone's like, let's take a look at this individual, because this individual is showing signs that they might want to have a different kind of conversation. If they tend to be risk takers. But if they tend to have, as we're discovering the priorities that might align with maybe wanting to do something different, for their lives. And so we're always looking for deviations from normal baselines, which we do in sales. And then the other thing that we're looking for is we're always offering choices. One of the ways that we make conversations about other people and make it about them is we do one of these 4 things. And what these 4 things do is helps us understand context, and it makes the conversation about the other person. So their brain's going to reward them with dopamine. And that number 1 is we seek their thoughts and opinions. Instead of walking up to someone saying, hey, here's what I think you should do, we say, hey, what do you think you should do? So you seek their thoughts and opinions, because that demonstrates that you value them and you want to affiliate with them, because here's a solid thing of all human beings. We're genetically and biologically coded to want to belong and be valued. Right. Second thing is we talk in terms of their priorities. In other words, we don't lay on them, hey, I'd really be interested in you sharing with me all the secrets that you have and all the contacts you have and how you're a threat to my national security. Instead, I say, what do you think is in your best interest and what kind of challenges do you have in your life? Because that's seeking their thoughts and opinions. And second one is it starts talking and learning about their priorities. Third, we validate their context. In other words, when they share with me what their thoughts and opinions are, I don't challenge it. I don't undermine it. I don't say you're wrong. Here's what I think. We validate it. In other words, we have non-judgmental curiosity about the things they're saying and the person they are. And finally, the greatest one is we give them choices. A typical thing I would do when I had a potential individual, whether it's a spy or a confidential human source, I give options. I say, hey, there's a few ways we might be able to move forward with whatever you're comfortable with, which is an option. I said, I have clients that have affiliation with the U.S. government. I have clients that have corporate affiliations, or we could just go independent. What kind of choice are you looking to make? If they make the government choice, I now know, all right, this person might be willing to have a conversation with the U.S. government. If they want to go a corporate choice, what they're looking for is a veiled fig leaf for plausible deniability in their lives, and they're still willing to take a risk. And if they don't want any risk, then I know, all right, I'll leave you alone. These are ways you have a great soft conversation and you actually learn about someone's priorities, you learn about them without there being any blowback. And never once did I have to say I'm from the U.S. government, because you start disclosing affiliation, because it's illegal, for us to make approaches, to individuals of this sort as FBI. And so that's what can get you in trouble. So you make these approaches, it becomes very obvious, what it is you're trying to sell and who you are, and you let fly. But it's really that simple.
Is it a dangerous job?
No. In general, no. It's not like the Jason Bourne's stuff you see on TV.
I think that's where my mind goes.
It's not, especially when you're domestic. The CIA, and foreign intelligence services that operate overseas in an undercover capacity, in other words, non-official cover officers, they're called NOCs. That can be dangerous because they do not operate within the diplomatic community. So in other words, none of them have diplomatic immunity for any illegal actions they might be taking. And so those are the ones that can be thrown in jail, arrested for treason, undermining governments. There's a whole litany of bad things. That's like the Jason Bourne types. But when you're working, generally the circles that we work in, it's really a higher intelligence echelon game. I mean, the people that are serving as diplomats in all these establishments and are recruited intelligence officers, they are some of the most sophisticated, educated, smooth talking people I've ever met in my entire life. I'm really, truly, regardless of political or national alignments, some of the best individuals I've ever met.
Do you ever find yourself just wherever you are? And I know going out these days is not as readily available, but do you find yourself just constantly reading the room?
Yes-ish is a good way to put it. I find myself really paying attention to people. It's been an evolution. When I first started doing this, and my first little book on building rapport, 10 techniques to quick rapport, and literally, when I first started teaching at Quantico, probably I think it was in 2008. Life's a journey, not a destination. And I really thought the end all be all was using these skills and techniques to manipulate people, to elicit information, get you to tell me your date of birth, your telephone number, your social security number, all these things I needed in order to do my job. And when I took that step back, first of all, I realized I was taking advantage of people, which gave me a really sick feeling. So I don't like doing that. I like being completely honest with what I need and why I need it. And if you want to share it, great. But the only way they're going to do that is if they trust you. And everything comes down when I learned to trust. And so when I first started doing this, I was really paying attention for the sake of what things can I learn about you to take advantage of what I need to do in order to win. Now the way I regard people in any situation is it's not necessarily reading a room, although you do, and all human beings do this. We are constantly establishing baselines of what normal looks like, when people are having normal, comfortable conversations. And so I tend to inadvertently establish normal so that I can really pay attention when someone deviates from a normal baseline. In other words, someone says something inappropriate to that individual, something a little off-putting, and I can register stress when someone has a stress reaction. So I know, hey, I got to make sure I avoid that, or maybe I need to intercede and be a placater for the situation, a de-escalator. So that's one thing I'm doing. But all human beings are doing this to varying degrees. But the really big thing I enjoy doing the most is being non-judgmentally curious about people. I love understanding how it is that, I mean, you and me together today, we're not even the same place, but, how did the universe collide in all these different instances to bring us to the same place-ish and have a great conversation, because our lives are overlapping for a small period of time. And that's fascinating to me. Like, what was your journey to this place? And to do so without judgment, so you can be genuinely curious. It's the best and cheapest gift you can give any other human being. And it's the first step to developing those good, healthy relationships. Because the biggest thing I've learned as this hardcore type A, hard charging, high tempo guy that is very typical former Marine and FBI guy is that it's not about what you make people feel about yourself. It's how you make them feel about themselves. And the best way you can do that is through non-judgmental curiosity, because when you have that, you're going to have relationships, because without relationships, you can achieve nothing in life. Zero. You can have the best genetics and biology on the face of the planet, best ideas, best everything. But without relationships, you have nothing. You might as well be a fool on top of a mountain by yourself. because everything's relationships, which come from trust.
You've mentioned trust right there and several times. Why, in your experience, is it so hard to gain trust but so easily lost?
I'll hit the easiest lost one first, because trust is generally lost when someone feels there's a lack of, I think a broad sweep across it, because someone has a lack of transparency in a particular area that is critical and might have poked at an insecurity of someone else. So that's why one of my 3 mantras I said at the beginning is open, honest communication with transparency. It's one of the best things you can do to try to maintain trust. And so it centers around that for me, is that when you actually are clear with your intentions, when you're transparent about what you're trying to do, you answer questions and concerns openly and freely, without deviation, without trying to shift things this way, without trying to overcomplicate things. That is usually the quickest and easiest way to start establishing trust. And it is lost when it's not that. One thing I like to try to do, though, is I don't blanket trust with everyone. I mean, I don't blanket trust with a person saying, I trust you or I don't trust you. It comes down to actually particular lanes, because people can really be predictable in each different lane by, I have the 6 signs of sizing people up for predictable behavior, because I want to reasonably expect what I can expect from every lane. So in other words, I might be able to predict what you're going to do at work and on a particular project, and you're going to fall short. And so if people just use that example to say, well, I can't trust this person, well, they just might not have the skills in this one area, but they might be exceptionally good at X, Y, and Z. They might be great fathers, mothers, teachers. I mean, there's lots of other areas that they might be very, very strong at. And to blanket disregard someone because of one particular area that you happen to be looking at that time is really unfair to the individual, as well as could be very limiting to cooperating together. So I try to be very, very specific, and I don't do a blanket trust or distrust anyone. I usually get very more specific.
Are some people just naturally better at reading other people and reading the signs, or able to build rapport? Are some just naturally better at being, I'll use the word intuitive, but I know you've got some thoughts on intuition as well.
Yeah. So, yes-ish, I'll say, so it comes into 2 categories. There are some people that are really naturally good at inspiring trust, because they are, and because let's go back to one of the things I said, non-judgmental curiosity. There are some people that are just naturally born, with their ego suspended, with humility and a lot of self-awareness, and they're naturally curious about other people, and they seek to learn and not to judge. Those are life's beautiful people that we love talking to. They're the ones that make us feel like $1 million when we're talking to them, because what are they doing? They're seeking our thoughts and opinions. They're talking in terms of what's important to us. They're validating us with it, judging us, and when appropriate, they give us choices. Those are the beautiful people in life. And yeah, there are some people, because I literally, when I was in the Marine Corps and told I sucked at leading and ranked last, I said to my commander, I said, all right, what do I need to do? And he goes, you just need to be a better leader and make it about everyone else but yourself. He was basically saying, do that. And I go like, well, how do you do that? And he goes, I don't know, just do it. So the natural born leaders are the ones doing the things you just said. The other half of us are trying to figure out what the heck they're doing. So when I had these life's humbling moments, I was fortunate enough not to place the blame of what was happening to me on others. I said, what am I doing wrong? I need to study these people and figure it out. And it became, I love taking the art form that these beautiful people have and making it a paint by number for narcissists like me to add, to the skill set I have to be better aligned with other people.
You mentioned the 6 signs for, I believe, sizing people up. Can you walk through those? What are those?
Sure. Some are quick and easy. Some take a little bit longer. The first sign is a sign I call vesting. Vesting is, in other words, is this person vested in my success as much as they are in their own? Do they see our successes tied together? People like this, generally go out of their way to give you opportunities to succeed. They call in favors for you. They call in relationships on your behalf. A lot of times they'll do these things unsolicited, so that someone is vested in your success. It's a great sign. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to see that manifest. Second sign is longevity. Do they see this relationship is long term or short term? In other words, is it just a quick quid pro quo, or do they see it longer? So longer signs tend to be they give you longer projects. They sign you up for training that's a year out. They put you on a schedule of evaluations and promotions, and so they include you in traditions that like yearly traditions or quarterly traditions. All these different signs are good signs of longevity. Next one is reliability. Reliability is the combination of competence and diligence. In other words, competence. Can they actually do the things that they say they can do on the resume? And diligence is that they actually have the energy and wherewithal to follow through and do it. So that's that one. Reliability. Then we have language. Language is great because it's usually the easiest one to see rapidly. If you're trying to do a rapid read on someone, language is something you can see right away. In other words, are they making the conversation about me, or are they focusing it on themselves? And so we went over those 4 things. So the language I'm looking for, are they seeking my thoughts and opinions? Are they talking in terms of what's important to me? Are they validating me and not challenging me? And are they giving me choices? And when they're doing that and they're congruent with their nonverbal behavior, a good high comfort nonverbals. And the great thing is we can do this via these Zoom calls right now too, because, when we're looking from the chest up, we're seeing each other's eyes, we're seeing the smiling, this little head tilt, eyebrow elevation, all these high comfort displays. When they're making a conversation about me, says, wow, most likely this is a good sign, as opposed to, eyebrow compression, lip compression, stress, stress indicators that are coming in saying, well, whatever I'm saying is not working. So that's language. Next is actions. Actions is great to me. In other words, are they taking positive actions? Are they inciting negative actions? But the easiest one for this one is I call past patterns of key behaviors. I thought of this one because, the old adage, what's the definition of crazy, is doing the same thing again and again, expecting different results. Same thing here. If I observe you doing something once, twice, or 3 times a certain way, the likelihood of you doing it 4 and 5, 6 times the same way is pretty high. And so I can anticipate and predict your actions based on that. And now if you don't, that means another stimulus, another priority has entered your life somewhere. And now I can become curious about what that was to actually change your behavior. Again, because the whole purpose of all these signs is to understand people at the deepest level so that you can predict behavior, so you can really manage your expectations of the relationship and what you can reasonably expect someone to do. Because if you can reasonably expect someone to do something a certain way, you can set the bar at a level and they're either going to meet the level or exceed it. Now, if they fall short of it, because you took so much time to understand them, something might have entered their lives to cause a deviation. So now you can become curious and become a resource for their success and help them overcome it if needs be. And the final sign is emotional stability. Emotional stability just says that, hey, when times of stress have hit, are you getting emotionally hijacked and going off the rails, or you can maintain good cognitive thought? And now everyone generally does react pretty rapidly to negative input, but how fast can they come back to cognitive thinking? Because, and part of stability to me is the level of self-awareness. I love self-awareness from the sense of, people that know their strengths and people that know their weaknesses, and they have no shame about it. They're transparent about it, and they have a plan to overcome it. Because those are the people I love to be aligned with, because they're open, they're transparent, and they know how to play to their strengths, and they have a plan to overcome their weaknesses. And so that when you share with me what those things are, I know exactly how to employ you. I know exactly how to value you. I know exactly how I want to affiliate with you. And also I know where, if you're interested, to give you tools and resources that make your strengths your greatest, your weaknesses your greatest strengths. So those are the awesome people in life I love to work with. So those are it, 6.
I'm interested in number 1, vesting, and having a vested interest in the outcome. As you're recruiting informants and spies when you were with the FBI, how did you, prove that you had their vested interests at heart when you're also seeking something, I'll say, potentially damaging as well at the same time? Is that the right phrase there?
Yeah. So interesting enough, it just comes down to understanding what their priorities are, and you take an action that is going to further their priorities. So a lot of times, people will really when you don't work any line of work, if you don't work in the line of work, you are your only opinion of it comes from movies and books and novels and things like that. But in reality, the individuals I worked with, so let's take it on the confidential human source side, the individuals that are providing intelligence to the U.S. intelligence community to help protect national security, not spies, just people in positions of knowledge to provide information. 99.9% of the time, these people's motivations / priorities is to help protect our warfighters on the ground, help protect our economy, help protect, U.S. citizens or U.S. persons, both domestically and abroad, by the information they provide. What I do when that's one of their motivations, I am able to take their information, put it into the system so the system can help do just those things. And I provide some feedback and, hey, listen, you made a difference in X, Y, and Z. And that becomes their reward because that's what they want to do. They're patriots, because that's all I sold, I offer people an opportunity to do something patriotic. If that's not the thing that you're into, no problem. I won't be a bother to you. So that's the motivation on that side. And my actions showing I'm vested in helping you do that by the actions I'm taking, being reliable, by having the competence to put information into a system and the diligence to follow through on it. That demonstrated to them that I am invested in them being successful. When it comes on the spy side, if it's at a higher level where their motivations are to, take down Putin or undermine, a nation state, the priority is really very much the same. I never worked with an individual that ever considered themselves a turncoat, a spy, a double agent. They usually consider themselves true patriots to their country. Maybe not the leadership that's currently in effect, but to their country, their core, their heritage, their background. And they believe they were taking actions to further healthy relationships with countries that could actually help them, like the United States, if that be the case. We work with the other Western countries as well. The Five Eyes are called: Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, very, very close alliances with these countries, and if that is the priority of the individual you're working with, that they want to form better, healthy relationships for the betterment of their families, the betterment of their countrymen, and they believe that the best way for them to do that is to share information that is going to undermine the negative people and the bad actors in their country, as well as form better relationships for decision makers and policymakers on our side. Again, I can take action and demonstrate through my reliability and competence that I can actually make good on that, as well as there are other priorities about resettlement, whether that's a priority, or just being anonymous, whether that's a priority. I mean, whatever the priority is in their lives, I just have to be able to demonstrate that I can follow through on that.
Robin, what does it look like when those 6 signs for sizing people up, what does it look like when they get abused? What does the relationship look like that? Or have you seen that get abused? I assume more so in the business sales side of things.
Yeah, and so you don't need all 6 signs. You have 1 or 2, and you'll generally hang on to those. Usually, it comes down to the language. I think language, stability, investing are easy ones in the business world to see easiest. Again, what I'm looking for to make sure they're not being abused is, I keep going back to transparency. People always ask me, how do you make sure you're not being manipulated? How do you make sure you're not being taken advantage of? And I said, it becomes pretty easy when you're listening and paying attention. In other words, when you're focusing on what other people are saying and the information they're providing, rather than thinking about the things you're trying to say, you're going to hear their words. And when you're hearing their words, it should be easy to understand if you're talking, overlapping priorities and you're talking the same business lingo or whatever it is. And if something isn't clear and you seek understanding by asking a question and seeking transparency, they should be able to give it to you, and they should be able to maintain that same tempo, the same modulation of voice, in other words, the same baseline of communication, and offer that transparency. If they do, it looks like it was unintended confusion, which is fine. Now, if they have a change in their baseline, if they have stress indicators coming out, if they become overcomplicated with explanations, if they're not answering your question, if they're trying to use word bridges to get to other topics, now we have an area that is lack of transparency. And I just kind of back away and say, listen, it doesn't look like we might have an agreement in this area. If you're willing to talk about another vector, we can do that. But otherwise, let's hold this for another day, because it doesn't look like we're ready to move forward on this. I just don't engage.
Can you share an example when that's happened? I'd love to hear like a real world example of when you've said, "Hey, look, this is going to work. We're not on the same page here."
I'll use it. It only happened once. I mean, I've had lots in the business world, but I'll use a potential recruitment operation one. I had matter of fact, in the book Sizing People Up, I have my great confidence human source. I codenamed him Leo. Leo had introduced me to some great human beings that were fantastic at really helping protect the world, not just the United States. It's always just protecting the world from disaster from each other. And in this one situation, we had a couple of really good operations where he had introduced me to a few folks because they'd given some indicators that that their priorities aligned with ours, and it was going to be good. And they did work out fantastically in that regard. We had another individual that came along that was given exactly the same signs. Leo had a number of conversations with him, asking him about wanting to, work with maybe a potential investment banker for that sector of the world. So they're looking for some ground truth. That was kind of our veiled attempt to say, hey, you're willing to provide information to get money. And this individual was reacting the same way that we had established norm for. And so Leo had set up this meeting. I meet with him. We're sitting there, at a tavern in New York City, and sharing a beer. And as I'm offering him, seeking his thoughts and opinions, and then sharing, the opportunities I have, for sharing some ground truth and for investors in the sector of the world. I said, I have, government investors, I have private sector investors. What are you looking for? He then turned it back on me and said, actually, I was hoping that I could offer you an opportunity to share some ground truth from what you're doing for my people. And I was like, well, I actually understand exactly what you're saying. And here's what I'll say. I said, it obviously is that we had a misunderstanding about who was offering who a job at this meeting. Let's do this. Let's finish our beers together. I want you to go back and think about the opportunity I offered you. I'm not interested in your opportunity, but how about this? If you want, contact me in another 2 or 3 months and see if your mind's changed. If not, no harm, no foul. Let's enjoy our beer. Just was not aligned on priorities, but not a bad relationship. I'm a believer in you never burn a bridge. You always leave people feeling better for having met you. And because what's that do? Brand. Your brand is everything, especially with the FBI in the last number of years, with the politics of everything, the FBI brand has been, thrown around by side like a tennis ball. And it never affected my daily work because my daily work was always relegated by my personal brand of my interaction with others. And you maintain that personal brand by making it about others and doing the things we've been talking about.
Robin, I've heard you talk on other shows. We were talking beforehand how many podcasts you've been on. You talk a lot about the bias of intuition, I believe is how you put it. And
the intuition side. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry I didn't finish the side of that.
No.
But yeah,
I'd love to get into that. And how is this different than just, quote unquote, trusting your gut or just trusting your intuition?
All right, so there's two sides that I like to think of as intuition or that gut feeling. The one, and you did a good job of putting the two words together, the bias. And so, we have what I call liking a confirmation bias or disliking confirmation bias. This is so easy and prevalent to see, and I always use things anecdotally. I've done grad work in organizational psych, and so I understand the sciences behind it, but I am a street practitioner. So I use just pure tons of observation. And so this one's easy to observe. And so each of us has a confirmation bias of liking or dislike. In other words, if we like a individual, we are constantly looking for them to be right, correct, and trustworthy. Use the presidential candidates as the greatest easy example we have. Think of, we'll go, not even this election, although this election is exactly the same thing. Go back to the last election in 2016. And my theory on this is it was the most contentious presidential election because both candidates were probably the most well-known that have ever run for president. Everyone already knew Hillary Clinton for years and years and years. Everyone already knew Donald Trump for years and years and years because, they're all over the place. And so before they even ran, people either liked them or disliked them. There you go. And I shared this with my daughter, who's not a Trump supporter at all. And she said, I'm not quite sure I'm buying into that. I said, really? I said, help me understand this. You don't like President Trump, right? And she goes, no. I said, is there anything he could do that you would agree with? And she goes, oh, no, never. There you go. So each of it. So part of that intuition is that if people are relying upon their confirmation bias, either positive or negative, that's going to be skewed because you're not objectively looking at things. You're not objectively looking at, behaviors, cause and effect, results of actions. And it can be very not just damaging, but it can really limit, your ability, one, for healthy brain. Because if you have nothing but positive confirmation bias and liking, you may be taken advantage of because you're not objective when you're listening. On the other side of that, if you have negative confirmation bias, that's given nothing to your brain because our brains thrive on the pleasure centers firing like dopamine, oxytocin in bloodstream, serotonin. And when we're thinking negatively all the time and we're looking for negative confirmation bias, the brain is not being healthy, and it has such a negative effect on us emotionally in our lives that it's not good for us to do that. So that's that side of the dangers of intuition and relying on liking or disliking. Now, the other side where people can actually have some decent intuition is if they don't take that liking side, as much part of it, but they're actually looking for language and nonverbal congruence. Then these are the ones that their gut feelings they have. I think I can just trust this person. Well, what they're seeing is they're actually seeing and hearing that language of them making it about them, and they're seeing the nonverbal high comfort displays for congruence. So those are the people that are being genuine and open and easy to read, and that's where they're getting that gut feeling because they're actually just nonverbally and verbally listening to the individual and not determining whether they like them or dislike them. They're actually just paying attention to them. Does that kind of help understand that a little bit better?
Yeah, my question becomes, why is it so difficult, your daughter's example, for us to consider that we might have a bias then?
Because this goes back to, I think the greatest challenge we as a world right now face is the nonstop influx of information from media and social media. Because what they do is when CNN first came out, back, I remember when I was in middle school or high school, when the cable news and cable channels first got invented, and the first cable news network was CNN, and they had to fill 24 hours of news and sell it to add to sponsors, to create ads, to pay for all this. They're going to start creating information that is enticing, is titillating for people to listen to. And so what happened is over time, you have groups that create nothing but their own confirmation bias for their particular group they're trying to appeal to. And so they no longer will pay attention to anyone else because what are we all seeking as human beings? We want to be valued and we want to feel affiliated and we want to think that we're right. And so when you have all these different groups that are listening to other people inside the same group saying, you're right, you're right, you're right, they're wrong. It fills that brain with what they want to hear in those moments rather than being objective. Because again, we're genetically coded to want to belong and feel we're in the right and feel we're in the know because it makes us feel safe. Because as human beings, we're always going to act in our own best interests as we see it from our point of view in terms of safety, security, and prosperity. If I'm listening to people that are echoing the things that I believe because I've listened to someone else say them, it makes us feel safe and secure because I'm surrounded by this blanket of emotion that says I'm right. Then there's the danger because when it's constantly being fed nonstop and people get addicted to listening to one stream or the other, that's where these walls get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no longer an objectivity when listening to ideas.
Can we train ourselves out of that? Are there things that we can do that?
Yes.
Yeah. What are they?
Non-judgmental curiosity. Stop. And this is a big step for people. Stop thinking you're right. Stop thinking someone else is wrong. Try to understand why they think they're right and why you think you're right or why you think they're wrong. Start trying to let go of your judgment and your anger when you hear something that doesn't agree with the ideas that you have, and seek to understand, wow, how is you came up with that idea? I mean, if our goal, and I think everyone's human goal, I think we'll all agree. I always start at the end. What's really the end goal that we all have? And this is to get along. Everyone wants, I don't think you could ever have anyone answer, we shouldn't get along. We should get along. So how can you, because you can't convince people of your ideas to get along. I always think in terms of, because convincing is about me. How do I inspire them to want to get along with me? In order to inspire someone to want to get along with me, I have to understand them. They have to think and see that I understand them. And so instead of when I hear your point of view, it's different from mine, instead of saying, that's not what I think, here's what I think. The likelihood of them hearing you is zero, because you just negated them. And now you're going to talk at them about what you think. Who cares? As opposed to, I hear your thoughts and ideas. Instead of negating it and fighting back, I say, wow, that's a different point of view. I never thought of it quite that way before. Help me understand. How did you come up with that? There's that non-judgmental curiosity. I'm seeking your thoughts and opinions. Because I'm seeking your thoughts and opinions, what are you now doing? You're going to share more. I'm now going to listen and pay attention and be curious without judging about how you grew up, the demographic in which you came up in, your economic status, your social, all these different things I'm getting curiosity about, because now I'm gaining context of understanding of you. Now, non-judgmental validation and curiosity does not necessarily mean I agree with you. I'm seeking to understand you, because when I understand you and understand why you take the actions you have, I understand why you have the beliefs you have, the rage and animosity starts ebbing away. Because understanding why people are like they are can really be the easiest thing to start ebbing that away. So, but it takes a big step for people to have some humble humility and get over yourself and just, hey, if you actually want to build relationships, you want to be understood, and you want people to listen to your ideas. Because the next part of this, instead of me seeking to understand how did you come up with that, if I would now want you to listen to my ideas, instead of telling you what I think, I'm now going to ask you what you think about what I think. In other words, instead of saying, here's what I think, I say, hey, thanks you so much for sharing all the information with me. I'm curious, what do you think about this? And now I'm asking them their thoughts and opinions about the ideas I wanted to talk at them. The likelihood they're going to hear it, 100%. Because you just sought their thoughts and opinions again about a different idea. And now, because again, the thing I love to say is you don't plant seeds with people by telling them what you think. You plant seeds with people by asking them what they think. That's how you have a conversation.
I love that. I'm reminded of the phrase, it's hard to hate someone up close, right?
Yes. It's a great thing. And you don't get in trouble. No one's gotten in trouble by listening.
Right. Right. I love what you just said. Fantastic stuff. I'm curious, how did you come to get into this? Where was the point in your life where you said, man, understanding and building rapport and understanding human behavior and analyzing that, where were the seeds of that for you in your life?
It's a great question. Lots of humbling moments, lots of failing at what I wanted to do. Matter of fact, the next process, because life is a journey, not a destination. And the next process of what I'm currently working and writing about is mentorship and guiding. I open this up by saying, people say, hey, how did you get to be the chief of the behavioral analysis program of the FBI? That is so cool. That would be like my life's long dream. And I said, it was anything but my dream. My dream was to go to the Naval Academy, become an aerospace engineer, Navy pilot, test pilot, astronaut. I failed at almost every single one of those things. And the things I did succeed at is because I had a teacher, mentor, and guide, and I didn't realize it. Being a type A person in life, we tend to think we have the solutions to all things we're going to try to do. I can achieve anything by force of will, by hard work and diligence. That's going to cause you peaks and valleys of success, because if you're relying upon yourself alone, you can't do it. Everything takes relationships. And so that goes back to that one thing I said. But when I look back at high school, the Naval Academy, the Marine Corps, and the FBI, I had humbling moments, for one thing, humbling moments where I being a type A, you always want to achieve, you're always trying to be successful. But what you ultimately wind up doing is stomping on people along the way by mistake and not realizing it, because I wasn't valuing people around me. I was trying to value the things I was trying to do. And so, but I was very aware of the fact that I did that. And so in hindsight, like if I accidentally elbowed someone or stomped on them to achieve a goal I had, and I noticed the effect it had, it destroyed me internally. And I said, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. Or it was pointed out to me that I was ranked last out of all these other Marines. I don't want to do that. Why am I doing this? So it was all those moments and really paying attention to others that were really good at this. And then being given the opportunity to teach it. I got better at it. I mean, we all do, through on the job training, osmosis, caring. I got better at it, but didn't know why or how. But when I had to go to Quantico and teach it, it really became obvious when I started giving the labels and meanings of what these great artists were doing. So I could make it, like I said, my 3 books are my manuals on how not to be the narcissist I was born to be. But it made it a paint by number, so it could be executed and added to who you are, because you can't change who you are, but you can add a lot of things to yourself. So that was the one thing. But getting back to the teachers, mentors, and guides, it really, my areas of success happened because I didn't know how to find a teacher, mentor, guide. I didn't even think I needed them. I thought I had it all because, I remember my parents said, you can do anything you want with hard work. You can do a lot with hard work, but along with hard work, you're going to need relationships. You're going to need someone to show you the path. And when I actually had people that I was so fortunate insert themselves in my lives because they became vested in me, for some reason, I have no idea what it was. They saw something and they vested themselves in my success. Those were the biggest successes I had in my life. I became fascinated with human behavior. The path I wound up going on, I wanted to go in Marine Corps because my eyes went bad. I couldn't fly. And I had Marines at the Naval Academy that I affiliated with that saved me from academic ruin. And so they saw this young man that had potential to be a good Marine Corps officer. So they vested in me. And I made a connection. I wanted to be like them because they were so good. And so that was the first one. From there, inside the Marine Corps, my first duty station, I learned a lot. I thought I was a natural born leader, found out I was a natural born self-centered ass. And so I had an awareness in my first duty station, but then I go down to Parris Island, South Carolina, where I'm a series / company commander in charge of all these recruits and drill instructors. And I had senior staff NCOs down there because the job in the Marine Corps of a staff NCO is to train a junior officer. I actually had a few really good ones that had inserted themselves in my life and taught me how to be a leader because they were already the masters. And so just paying attention to them. And same thing in the FBI, I had a couple of great teachers, mentors, and guides, both as confidential human sources, my source Leo, and a supervisor, and then my good friend in the book, I call him Jesse Thorne, that inserted themselves in my lives at the right time to demonstrate to me, how to really be successful in life. And they couldn't define it the way I've defined it now because it was just naturally who they were. But thankfully, they gravitated towards me at times that were critical. And literally, I wound up being introduced to the behavioral analysis program when I had a case in New York. Humbled up and said, I need help, some advice, some guidance. And someone said, you need to call the BAP team, the behavioral analysis program. I said, what the heck's that? And I call and they assembled a team for me of 4 or 5 case agents that came in and looked at my case, looked at my investigation, looked at the interview of the individual I wanted to try to recruit or the operation. And they completely vested in my success with no expectation of reciprocity. And I thought that was the coolest darn thing I'd ever seen because these were the most altruistic, great human beings that were there just to help me be successful with no expectation. I was like, I want to be part of that. And so kind of the rest gets history. Long answer again. I'm sorry. I get long ones.
Fine. I want to go back to something. I got the sense that as you were saying, you stepped on people or elbowed people out of the way to achieve your goals, that there's a specific point or there's a specific person that you're thinking of right there. Am I correct in saying that?
There's a few actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might not even be. So here are a few things I don't like the word regret because I love the experiences I had because it makes you who you are.
Yeah.
But bumping into classmates from the Naval Academy when I go to reunions or football games or something, for years, I've gotten over it now because I've gotten good feedback. But for years, my first thing I would do is I'd give them a big hug and apologize for the self-centered ass I was all those years ago because I felt I was oblivious to their needs and wants and the struggles and challenges they were going through because I was too focused on my own. And in hindsight, I look at situations, and we all do this. We are our own worst critics. And so, looking back at situations where I judged others, I remember I was very judgmental of an individual and their professionalism. And being an extrovert from New York, my mouth runneth over in my younger years of judgment. And my greatest lessons in life were that when I was that young, generally, if I judged you that hard, you became my roommate. And when you became my roommate, I gained context. And when I gained context, you became my best friend. The one I judged the most became one of my best men at my wedding. So that was one of life's first lessons that young. And then inevitably, when you hear rumors about you behind your back from people on your squad or people in your unit, or when they, like in the Marine Corps, when they duct taped me inside my sleeping bag and my cot and left me in the middle of the bombing range in the middle of the night. These are clues that says I'm doing something off. And so maybe not wronging individuals personally, although probably a couple if you ask them. But definitely I saw the impact that was having by not understanding, dude, it's not all about you.
The natural curiosity that you mentioned earlier in bringing someone in close in that part of our conversation, it sounds a lot like empathy, but I know you have attached an ST to the beginning of the word empathy to create stempathy. What is that? Can you explain that?
Yes. Thanks. That's a great one. I love stempathy. So when I started really analyzing again what I'm doing, because this is extremely empathetic process, because when you're understanding people and how they see you and how they see the world through their point of view, that's empathy. But a lot of times I got asked, well, Robin, if you're nothing but empathy, don't you get stepped on and walked on like a carpet? If all you're doing is soft, mushy stuff. I said, well, actually, first of all, empathy is not soft, mushy stuff. Again, it's understanding context for communication. But the other half of that, what I noticed I was doing was, because this entire process is extremely thoughtful and cognitive, which is, I love Stoicism, because Stoicism is just basically the understanding of the cause and effect of human behavior. And so I put the two together because I have this whole process is a very stoic approach to understanding the cause and effect of human behavior, understanding human beings are always going to act in their own best interests in terms of safety, security, and prosperity. In order to demonstrate safety and security and prosperity of others, you have to make sure you're seeking their thoughts, opinions, talking in terms of priorities, validating, giving choices. You can tell I really know this stuff down. Right. And so when you take that with understanding their context and non-judgmental curiosity, you come up with Stoicism, empathy, stempathy.
I love that. Last few questions here for you, Robin, before I let you go. What is a question that you wish people asked you more?
I wouldn't say wish to ask me more, as I do get it asked quite a bit, but I think the most useful thing I like to share, is a good way to put it, is, so what do I start doing today? How do I start making changes? How do I start, especially, with the election coming up and the holidays coming up, how do I heal relationships? How do I foster relationships, both personally and professionally? So here's what you do. First, stop looking for what's wrong in people and start looking for what's right. Here's a thing I love. I love discovering people's greatness. Everyone has it. And it might not be professional. I love discovering people's personal greatness, whether they're great philanthropists, whether they're great community members, great fathers, mothers, aunts, uncles. Everyone has a greatness somewhere. Stop trying to find what's wrong with people, because I guarantee you, if you give yourself a confirmation bias of looking for wrong, you will find wrong, because we all have insecurities. We're born perfect. The world messes us up for about 19 years, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to overcome it. Get over it. Find the greatness, because if you want to have a great conversation with others and they know that you're always seeking their greatness, that's a great way to start. Second, discover at least 3 priorities / challenges that people have in their lives. Whether it's personal and professional, because when you give it a label and meaning, you're going to recognize now opportunities in yourself with your relationships to be a resource for them in terms of those priorities. So make sure you can always talk in terms of their priorities and become a natural resource for others in terms of those priorities. You start doing those 2 things. Now, coupled with that non-judgmental curiosity, in other words, I regard everyone around me in my life when I start interacting, especially new relationships, as a new reality show. Because hey, you have a reality that's completely different than mine, even though we're breathing the same air, standing in the same space, on the same Zoom call. Let me hear your reality show. Have that kind of curiosity without judging it. And you start doing those 3 things, and it's not like, hey, today I'm going to flip a switch and go from 0 to 100. No, it's recognizing opportunities as they present themselves, because all these opportunities present themselves every day to every person. It's just, are you going to pay more attention to yourself or more attention to the other, to start taking those little things? Because us as human beings, we're not looking for people to be perfect with us. We're looking for people to make the best effort they can with the tools they have. And that's what starts really changing relationships and starts enhancing them.
When you hear that, do you get people that kind of counter argue that with like, well, how am I supposed to get what I want out of that? And what do you say to them?
You're not. Because then it's about you, and the entire thing starts fading.
A little bit of a leading question there.
So what's interesting is if you want to do that, I always say when the first time you wield the code of trust, because it's a simple 5-step process I talk about, it's miraculous. But the thing that makes the code of trust work is ego suspension and being a resource for the success of others without expectation or reciprocity. If you start doing things for self-gain, you can, but you're going to go back to the seesaw of success, failure, because I don't think, and no one's ever argued with me that you don't need relationships. Right. And if you start doing things for your own gain alone, you're going to burn through relationships and you won't have any left. And then you're going to keep facing failure or struggles or challenges that you didn't have to face because you got to lean in. We all don't have all the answers we have individually in our own lives. I mean, we've all had this where, we're trying to accomplish something. We're trying to break down a door or window or a wall, and we can't do it. And meanwhile, the ones that get through that door, window, or wall, they find a way around because they take that step back and they broadcast out to the good, healthy relationships. Does anyone else have any other ideas? And all of a sudden you're flooded with ideas and the challenges evaporates because you relied on others and you became that same resource for others when they did the same thing.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Robin. How can people connect with you, follow along with the work that you do?
Very easily. I try to make it a one-stop shop. Go to my company, which is peopleformula.com, all one word, peopleformula.com. Multiple levels of interest and following. You follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. I put out a couple quotes a week. Try to put little snippets there. I have a blog I try to contribute to pretty regularly. I have online training as well, at every level, as well as personal coaching and training. So just go to peopleformula.com. Choose what is most valuable to you, including lots of links to podcasts that I'll keep including on there as well. Beautiful.
Robin, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. I haven't talked so much spy talk in such a while. It's real good job diving deep. Thank you.
Very good. Take care, man.
You too.
Many thanks to Robin for sharing his story on the show today. I've got some thoughts on this one. Deals get done, whether you're recruiting spies or trying to close a business deal, or trying to get someone to see a situation from a different point of view. When you focus your attention on them and those 4 mechanics, those 4 levers that you can pull or utilize, as Robin described, seek their thoughts and opinions, talk in their priorities, validate their context, and give choices. These are the things, as Robin described, that natural-born leaders do. They make it about other people. And you've got to have self-awareness if this doesn't come naturally to you, as it initially didn't for Robin, as you heard in that conversation. And finally, trust is lost when there is a lack of transparency and it pokes at an insecurity. So always be clear with your intention. All right? Please do me and Robin a huge favor. Share this episode with someone you know who might also find some value in listening to today's conversation. Share this episode with your network. Help spread the good word about the importance of asking more questions. And if you like the conversations with amazing guests like Robin that I have on each week, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Subscribing also helps the show gain more reach. If you ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me at michael@thefollowupquestion.com or go to thefollowupquestion.com and reach out there. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question, and until then, keep asking questions.